Rain, go away. Seriously, go away. I miss baseball. There might have been a rain out today. Actually, two of them. We have a lot to talk about. We're going to talk some college baseball. We're going to talk some draft. And we're going to talk about when the Guardians are finally going to play baseball again.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to a solo edition of Locked On Guardians. We cover your team from the majors to the minors and everything in between. On today's show, we are going to talk about a mix mash of things. Got potpourri up in the top there for any Jeopardy fans. Talk about what the plan is in the terms of the scheduling, how it's going to affect these next few days, and then we have to talk about Travis Bazana's injury. After that, we're going to talk about some college names to know. We haven't talked as much draft because the Guardians are picking later this year, but it is still a class where they have 3 picks in the top 70, as well as giving you some highlights from the mock draft. There's no time for the full mock draft, but we will highlight on it. But I want to thank you for making today's podcast your first listen today and every day, wherever it is you get podcasts. And a big shout out to all of our everydayers who are sticking with us when there is no baseball going on. The true diehards who care about guys that the Guardians might target in day 3 of the draft. That's right. I will have a deep sleeper name you have to know in today's show, as well as some players in the first round. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Who am I? This could be your first podcast. If so, thank you for joining me. I appreciate you hopping in today and listening and or watching the show. I am Jeff Ellis. Before coming to Locked On, where I was one of the first people Locked On reached out to when they wanted to expand into the wonderful world of baseball. I was a longtime draft and prospect analyst at Scout in 24/7. Hence why when I have a solo show and there is supposed to be 2 games and there ends up being no games, I decide to lean on that background and that knowledge of college baseball. Let's talk about what is happening with these games. So if you're tuning in like I'm confused, Wednesday. Now it is supposed to be a day game because they have a 4 game. One of our everydayers pointed out in the comments. I wish I had paid better attention when I was doing comments. Tell you who it was. We mentioned this incorrectly. You know, we get things wrong. It happens earlier in the week, but the Guardians will have it was supposed to be a getaway game because it's 3 against the Twins, then 4 against the Tigers. So they're going to start at 12:10 Eastern. For me, that's 11:10. Resume the first game. Once that game is done, they are going to immediately hop over, not immediately, 30-minute break in between, and then they're going to start game 2. And then they're going to play that one. And after that, Cleveland will head to Detroit. It's a little bit chaotic. The upside to no game today is it's extra rest for that bullpen, some of those arms. Personally, you know, we know Logan Allen can't resume. I'm hoping it's Kobe Allard. I say just go with the lefty. Now, maybe, honestly, you go with a righty than the lefty. I know some people talked about maybe Cantillo. Allard's pitched well in this longer relief role. I'd like to see him. But maybe, you know, I got to look, you know, depending on how the lineup matches up, maybe you have someone else go in there for an inning. And then, but I would like to see Allard for at least 2 innings tomorrow. I think he is the natural player to jump in and help with. It's just, you know, it's an awkward situation when you have a resumed game and then a second game afterwards. You also don't want to, you know, debilitate your pen. The extra day off gives you that chance for rest, but still it is not ideal. You know, it's going to be Gavin Williams versus Chris Paddock in game 2. Paddock has pitched better of late. He had a rough start to the year. Gavin has been maddeningly inconsistent this year. So that's going to be a toughie. It's a 2-game series. Cleveland desperately needs to get things on track. A lot of negativity in the comments. A lot of negativity this year in general. And I just got to keep pointing out, like, yeah, this is a team that hasn't been pretty, but they've been effective. And they are, you know, if the season ended today, they would be in the postseason. You know, I saw ESPN had a pretty terrible article about, you know, why Cleveland's a pretender. And their whole article was about, well, Brian Rocchio isn't a very good shortstop. And it's like, he's not their shortstop anymore. The whole article was written like Rocchio was still their shortstop. In terms of weighted runs created plus, they have a 96. That's 4 points below league average. That ties them with the Giants, puts them just a point below Atlanta and Baltimore, puts them in a tie for 18th. So they're lower middle of the pack. They could be much worse. For as much as we complain about the offense, this is not anywhere even close to a bottom 5 offense, in spite of their struggles, in spite of the issues. I think sometimes we get a little too focused on what they can't do or what they don't do, instead of realizing that baseball isn't the 90s. It's not even the early 2000s version of baseball. They keep trying to find ways to help the hitters. This year it's sinking the strike zone. The pitch clock actually is probably beneficial to the hitters, getting rid of some of the sticky stuff that pitchers were using. But the way pitchers, adapt has been quicker than hitters. And it just set up this situation in the game of baseball where hitters are always behind. They're always playing catch up. And it is a sport that, the pitchers have the advantage. You look at, just in the division itself, Cleveland's got a better offense in Kansas City by a country mile. Like that is I see a lot of people like, there's no way they're going to be, fourth in this division. They're going to struggle to be 500. It's like, yeah, it's their first 4-game losing streak of the year. And that stinks. And they were losing in the game that is going to be resumed. So who knows? Maybe it gets worse before it gets better. This is a team that has still played well for the most part. And, they, like I said, they'd be in line for playoffs. They've won more series than they've lost by a good margin. That stuff it doesn't happen by accident. So have some patience with the team. It's baseball. It's a long season. There's ups and downs. This is a down. I'm not debating that, but I still have a lot of faith. There's still a lot of good pieces and parts on this roster. And most teams are like that. Most teams have massive holes. And like the other side of it is, again, I'm going to go back. Number one stat for like who's been overly lucky and who has not been lucky. Cleveland has the 4th worst BABIP in baseball. That's batting average of balls put in play. You should have about close to 300 nowadays. They're at 270. Only the White Sox, the Rangers, and the Angels are below them. A team like Baltimore that's struggling is at a 275. Seattle having a great year at 281. That's a good sign for them. The other side, the highest BABIP in baseball, Detroit Tigers, 313. St. Louis, who is a questionable team for a lot of people, second highest at 312. There's some room for regression there, and there's some room for improvement. Let's talk about Travis. Travis Bazana, 8 to 10 weeks. That is awful. It's a guy who's really never had any health injuries, comes to Cleveland, gets hurt. I don't know what it is. This is why they shouldn't draft guys with bad health records. Like, that's why I didn't want Weatherholt, just because it's like, I'm scared. This guy already has a lot of little things. Bazana was completely clean, and he's going to miss 8 to 10 weeks. We don't know how long that was bothering him, so that could also explain some of his up and down performance. Plus, to point out, he had some really good numbers, specifically against righties. He was getting better and better. Injuries stink. Every team is dealing with it. We had a conference call today for all the Locked On hosts, and we were talking about this and that, and one of the hosts was talking about injuries to his team, and I want to be like, dude, welcome to every team in baseball. It does stink for Trav. That does mean, next 3 months, forget about it. Again, in a perfect world, I'm hoping he comes back, really settles in, is healthy, gets himself up to AAA, and then is someone they consider for this team in, the postseason towards the end of next year. And then maybe he starts the year with them. I know that is aggressive, and I know that's probably more wish casting than what's going to happen, but he was looking better. He was looking fine. He was looking solid. Overall, it's just everyone in their top 10 almost has gotten hurt this year. It has been very dispiriting to see, which is kind of interesting because that's what it was like a few years ago as well. They had great health last year. The year before that, they had some similar issues. We're going to come back. I'm going to tell you some steep sleepers you need to know in this year's draft. I'm going to tell you who, not only do I have number 1 overall, but who I give 2 picks at every pick. I give you kind of a maybe let's get crazy scenario, and as well as the pick. And we'll do some highlights. We don't have time for the whole mock. When we come back, you're going to hear about that deep sleeper. You're going to hear about some guys who are leading the country in stats to give you some basic information. And, of course, the mock draft, all on today's Locked On Guardians. Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money, our good friends over at Monarch Money. Here's why I love Monarch Money. Before I get into the ad read, before I do all that stuff, I love them because it's a way to help you track your own spending. It's a way so it just makes it easier for you to quickly track. There's so many people out there trying to scam you out of your funds. Monarch Money is there to have your back and defend you. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered where'd all that money go between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment? It's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So stop just managing your money and start building wealth. As I said, it is an app designed to be easy to use, all in one place, and to give you more information. Like, hey, pointing out ways that you are maybe spending money fully or foolishly, I should say, and how to help you budget and save better. So right now, take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Not often do I get to say those words, so I'll say it again. 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Thank you all for sticking with me on today's show. We are going to, like I said, we're going to talk some draft. We're going to first start with stats. I'll give you the deep sleeper to know, maybe like a later day guy that really stood out to me when I was doing some numbers and some research. And then we will come back around and do some of that mock. So first, people always like to know about numbers or like some, kind of the basic stats in college baseball. So if you were not paying attention this year, that's fine. It was definitely not as interesting when you don't have the top overall pick. And just in general, it was not as interesting in class. Who led the country in home runs this year? After the contest a year ago, the race with Condon and everyone else, Mason Neville at Oregon, 26 home runs. Don't have to worry about him for Cleveland. He was really bad in the Cape, as we all know. Cape matters. Maybe too much for Cleveland. I get it, though. But it is a situation where Mason Neville at Oregon showed some great improvement this year in a lot of different ways, but he led the country. Another potential name to know high on this list is Andrew Fisher from Tennessee, who I know MLB.com had to Cleveland in their most recent mock. Probably, to me, first base only, but a really interesting hitter. One of the more, I think he's a top 10 guy in this class. I would be content with him there if he is there. People love batting average. So the only potential like first, second rounder I really saw in there was Alex Lodosi's from Florida State. He's got a cousin from Georgia Tech who's also going to get drafted, has a little more power. Alex is a, shortstop contact type of guy. Does make sense to Cleveland in that regard. If we're looking at more of those advanced stats, BABIP I've talked about in college baseball is important because it tells us about positive contact rates. Again, Alex Lodosi there for that one. So it's a name, again, that stands out for multiple reasons. Isolated power. Mason Neville's in that one we talked about. Ryland Zabrowski, who I've talked about many times on the show. I'm pulling for the 23-year-old from Georgia. Cooled off a little bit in conference play. Absolutely demolished at the start of the year, but a kid that I am pulling for quite a bit. And you also have to give a shout out to Kyle Fossum, who transferred into Youngstown State this year and was a top home run hitter in and around the country. In terms of OPS, your leader, Zabrowski, who I mentioned, is fifth. Cardinal Thibodeau from Southern University, Baton Rouge, I am not familiar with. I got to be honest with. I don't dive that deep, but he is the guy there. The problem is there's not a lot of players that really jump out when you do this whole deep list. Alex Lodosi, again, is in there. And name for next year, probably the number one guy on my board for next year is Rock Chalosky out of UCLA. I loved him a lot in his high school year. His dad is a scout, I believe. On top of that, Andrew Fisher, 8th in OPS. So another, stat guy to know. Pitching side of stuff, if you are, scrolling through the numbers, fun guys to look at. K to walk ratio. One of the players that kind of jumped out at me when I was going through trying to find someone. Dylan Volantis is a freshman, I believe, this year. Unfortunately, he's a guy to watch. Also, I think for next year is a draft eligible sophomore. I could be wrong in that. He had some really good numbers. Tyler Bremner should be off the board when Cleveland picks, or else I would hope they would run that up. Third best K to walk ratio, Sean Youngerman. We'll talk about in a moment here. Most strikeouts, that the top two guys in the country are two of the highest rising arms, Liam Doyle and Cade Anderson. It's conference time, so the numbers never stop adding up. But essentially, for a lot of players, the season's over. Lowest ERA, Volantis, by the way, third there amongst draft eligible player, bigger draft names. JB Middleton is 10th in the country out of Southern Miss. Could be someone Cleveland looks at. Does kind of fit. They do have a history with the University of Southern Mississippi. I'd have to go look at his. I believe he performed in the Cape. He's another kind of, I'll say late riser, but a guy who was definitely one of the few, I don't know if I want to say few, but one of the players who has grabbed the bull by the horns, as it were, and really jumped out there in terms of improving his draft stock this year. In the Cape, he had all of 8 innings back in 2023. So he missed a lot of bats. But yeah, I think Middleton is a guy that's interesting. But the player I want to talk about, honestly, and this is a guy that when I was going through it, I'm like, oh, you you go through and you make those checks lists. Like I know Angel Cervantes, the prep pitcher, is someone they're gonna like. I've been told Brady Ebel, one of the 4 potential first round picks from Corona. It's probably only going to be 2 guys. Whose dad Dino is is in baseball. I'm blanking on what Dino Ebel is. I'm sure someone is shouting at it right below. But Cleveland likes California players. We know this. And Sean Youngerman was a kid who went to Chaminade College Preparatory School in West Hills, California. That is one of the premier baseball programs in the country. He went to Westmont College in Santa Barbara for 2 years and transferred to Oklahoma State this year. He is 20 years of age. He is a young junior. He will not turn 21 until July 9th, so right before the draft. So again, California, young for his class, went to multiple programs. How do you do in the Cape, you might ask? Well, this past year in the Cape, he had 12 strikeouts per 9, 3.6 walks per 9, 24.2 innings. He was one of the leading strikeout pitchers in the Cape. Fantastic ERA in a year where a lot of guys hit for a lot of home runs in the Cape. Youngerman was great. He started the year as a closer for Oklahoma, moved him into the rotation, touching 97. I always thought it was more of a splitter in the past when I saw it, but I saw some people say more of a cutter. Those are different pitches, I understand, but he's got not a splitter, a slider. I don't know why I said splitter, a slider, and then a change that is a developmental pitch. The slider is probably his best pitch. 2 interesting pitches, a developmental third, could be a starter, maybe is more likely a reliever, but you can wait a while to do that. 6'3", 225, so he's solidly built. But when you look at everything Cleveland wants, California, young for the class, success in the Cape. They've drafted from Oklahoma State before because sometimes there's a little more meat on the bone for development. Has the pitch mix they like as well. There's a lot of positives in Sean Youngerman. Now, Youngerman is probably more of like a day 2 pick, but just you want a deep sleeper, you want a name to know. Like if Cleveland ends up drafting him, you can be, hey, I can tell you all about Sean Youngerman. So that's kind of when I do this, I like to pull out a name that really fits what they've done in years past. And this is one of those guys. I added him to the list with Ebel and Cervantes, who I talked about it previously this year. Sean Youngerman, a player to check out, a player to know, was not the strongest year for Oklahoma State. He was a high point, and he's a kid you want to root for. His mom has been fighting a battle against cancer for years, and has been through a lot as a kid and as that family unit. So Sean Youngerman's a very, very easy kid to root for. And there's a lot of good stuff there. So who knows, maybe this is a player you will eventually see wearing a Guardians uniform. So check him out and, comment below. Here's your point to join in for all of our everydayers, your first listeners, everyone else. Who are the players you would like me to research into? Who do you think is a Guardians target? Who would you like me to talk about? Because when we have off days, we talk a lot of prospects, but yesterday Justin handled that, right? So if I'm going to rotate and find some college guys to talk about, who do you want me to talk about? So use the comments below to help direct me. Who do you want to hear more about? Who are you interested in? What do you want to hear more about? Or, I know some of you will just tell me, oh, I don't care about the college baseball, but I'll tell you what, more people care than don't. So I'll keep doing it. We will be right back to do a modified mock draft, and I will tell you where you can find the full mock draft. I went 43 deep. I went all the way until the second round began and stopped. 2 picks for each team, and I'll tell you where to find that in a moment on today's Locked On Guardians. I want to thank you all for joining us again and give a big shout out to the MLB game night. They will take all of our videos, everyone's reactions, put it all together, and you'll see our nows, you'll see additional content from every team every night about all the games that happen in and around baseball. You won't see us tonight because, again, rainouts are the worst. So mock draft time. For those who want to know, this is one of the worst drafts I can ever recall. It's interesting, and I'm not alone in saying that. A lot of people feel this way. I mean, I got to be honest. I would take any of the top 7 guys from a year ago over anyone in this year's class. I might take any of the top 8 or 9, if I'm being honest. I like Jamie Arnold a lot. I think Ethan Holiday is interesting. No one really stepped up or separated. So let's hit some highlights. Okay, let's do that. I don't have enough time. Again, I will post the link in the show notes. I went through 43 picks. What I have always done is a pick and then a sleeper pick, or, however you want to call it pick. But I've been doing that for better part of a decade. So I decided to do it as well. I don't have analysis. I just put names down that I thought fit. For those who do not know, I might talk with a few people. When I'm doing a mock, though, I find that when you talk to people, you mostly get lies. So I'm looking at the people in the front office and what their tendency data is, because that's what's going to tell you the truth. I always tell the story. I got a hot rumor one year that wrecked my mock that the White Sox were all about Gavin Lux. And I'm like, really? Zach Collins feels like their type of guy. They've only taken college guys. And this person's like, no, I know they're going to take Gavin Lux. No, they took Zach Collins. That's the way of it. I love the time I had like a perfect 8 for 8 mock, and the Atlanta Braves came up with the Shane Langeliers pick, and an agent for another player who the Braves didn't take sat down and told me, no, he's going with this pick. I was close to that agency at the time, and they're like, yeah, he's going to the Braves. Well, that didn't happen. So you want to typically look at that more than anything else. Let's start at the top. I know Ethan Holiday is the one you see everywhere, and he is the sleeper here. I actually think it's Jamie Arnold right now. The reason I say that is I think it's a chance to save a little bit more money. I think Holiday is going to be pretty expensive. Maybe more expensive than he's worth. Like I like Jackson more than Ethan. Ethan is all power. There's not a lot of other tools. You're kind of hoping that the power will be a carrying tool. He's probably a third baseman. He could be good, but he's probably average. Average hit, average. Like he doesn't pop. Washington also went very college heavy a year ago. Very, very college heavy a year ago. The scouting group last year, it was their first draft. Now, sometimes that happens. I believe it was a new scouting group. Sometimes I get those confused in my head, but I believe it was a new group. Sometimes they go more conservative in year one, so it could change. But a lot of people have Arnold as the number 1 player in this class. He is safe. He's secure. You're going to get a fast moving, easy player there. I'm just going to do kind of the top 10. And then, I promise the Guardians pick in this. Number 2, Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. Yes, I've asked a few people with minor connections. A lot of mocks have pitchers there. I have heard they really like Eva Arqueta, the probably third baseman from Morgan State. A lot of chase to his game. I was a little bit surprised. I wanted him to be an all-green player. When I say that, it means when I look at my advanced data that I have access to, that he, like how Bazana was, how Weatherholt was. Condon was close to that, but like there were certain guys. Sean Keys was a guy where all the data was green. Everything was in the upper tier. And I was kind of surprised that he's not that. Now he has some good exit velocity. You're open for some more power. I think the sleeper there is Liam Doyle, because they don't care about some of the mechanical issues there. He could be a fast move guy who helps them in a year. Mariners at 3. I think if Seth Hernandez is there, that's the thing. There has never been a prep right-hander 1. Seth Hernandez from Corona, that program I talked about, Brady Ebel, has a ton of justified hype because, there's the pitch mix, there's velocity, there's everything there. Could he go number 1? He could. It'd be quite the change from what we've seen in years past, just in terms of how the past few years teams have been less likely to draft prep pitchers. We have seen them slide a bit more. I would argue like Cleveland should not have been able to get Braylon Doughty where they did. Ryan Sloan, I thought, was a top 20 player in last year's class. And Cleveland, could Cleveland have got him at the top of the second round? I'm trying to remember now. Seattle picked after them. Like they took Cozart. Man, is there a world where they get Sloan? Oh, that would have been nice. But guys like Sloan and Doughty should not have slid as far as they did. But teams are more afraid to take that prep arm because they're going to get hurt. They're going to miss time. It's just almost a guarantee now. So you're taking a significant risk in that top 5. And then, something I talked about last year, I crunched the data. So I know teams have done this as well. And I know there's a guy, I found like an old website for someone who's now in Cleveland's front office and has been for a while, that basically came to the same conclusion, which is like, you are more likely to get a star college player than you are to get an average prep player in the top 10. Like the college players just outperform at such a higher level that it has to be a special talent. So I have Hernandez at 3. At 4, the Rockies. Hey, they like to go with power. They like bloodlines. Matt Holliday played there for a while. They need to do something. So Ethan Holliday there with Jace Lavalette, because they sometimes go for name brand there. St. Louis, the new front office is the old Boston front office, right? And you got some Cleveland guys there. I think Eli Willits, son of Reggie Willits, who I believe was a reclassifier shortstop. So you got bloodlines, you got young for the class. And when Bloom was in Boston, he took shortstops every single year or up the middle. It's like Nick York was a high school shortstop who moved to second. So I'm kind of looking at that situation with Eli Willits making a ton of sense with past history. Cade Anderson being my sleeper. If they decide to go pitcher, I think he is cleaner than Doyle. Pittsburgh, love ceiling and upside. Billy Carlson. I like him more than Willits, but it's close. Carlson is another Corona player. He is a two-way guy, slick defender. Do I dare say the best defender at short in this class? Maybe. Just tools for days. Very much fits what Pittsburgh has done with Liam Doyle as a sleeper if they want to go for another high-level SEC performer. Miami at 7. They went for ceiling a year ago, so I have them doing that again with JoJo Parker, the rising shortstop, and the sleeper Kason Cunningham, the falling shortstop. There, they went with Morlando. That's why I was kind of tempted with Kason Cunningham, because Morlando was kind of the guy who slid in the process a year ago, and that's Cunningham this year. But Parker is just a name that is really moving up, and I think he's got some great physical tools and traits. Toronto at 8, I have Liam Doyle as the main pick, with Kyson Witherspoon is the sleeper. They've gone for a lot of college arms in recent years. Yusevich comes to mind. Was that last year? Sometimes it starts to bleed again. I think it was 2 years ago. But Alec Manoa, I know it hasn't worked out since that first great year, but Doyle has been a high-level performer. Him and Witherspoon, I think, and Anderson all being there, like those are guys who are going to go in the top 10. It's interesting, as a year ago, we talked about, like, it's like 2 college arms and nobody after them. And this year, the college arms are maybe the depth of this draft. 9, Cincinnati Reds. They have gone for college arms and college arms and college arms. So Cade Anderson sitting there, arguably the top player on the board, the LSU left-handed pitcher. If they want to go with a bat, Gavin Killen, the shortstop from, I get myself in trouble, I believe Tennessee. I'm having a brain cramp. Just stood out to me at this point in time for a player who, did everything right this year, performed well, and every time I watched him, I liked him. Like, he's another player I think is a little underrated overall. That leaves the White Sox at 10. People are like, why are the White Sox at 10? Because if you're a big market team, you can't pick top 5 like 2 years in a row. And Chicago's in a big market. There's going to be like 4 teams next year that are going to have to start at the 10th overall pick. So there's going to be a bunch of teams who don't make the postseason, who have decent records, who move into the top 10 because of, is it like the Angels, the Nationals cannot pick in the top 5. The Rockies, I believe, can't. I'd have to go look and see who else, but there's a few teams that can't pick. So White Sox, Kyson Witherspoon, the right-handed pitcher from Oklahoma. I was tempted with Toronto because we know they love bloodlines, and Kyson's twin brother pitches on Oklahoma as well. White Sox have been all about Cape data as much as Cleveland of late, and he was getting the Cape. That's why I have Devin Taylor as a sleeper. And just to continue with the pitchers, the A's with Tyler Bremner. Bremner was, on a lot of boards, was a top, maybe the top player in this class. Was definitely top 3 on most to start the year. And then he struggled in non-conference play, which is not good because that's, UC Santa Barbara doesn't play in a big conference. So yeah, it's great that he's been tearing up his lesser conference. But when you face kind of some of the bigger programs, it wasn't there for him. And then, hey, if you like Jacob Wilson, you got to like Merrick Houston. So he made sense as a sleeper. Going down, Minnesota, Gavin Killen, who I mentioned liking before. That's who I have going there with Mason Neville is a sleeper. Continuing in the division, Kansas City getting Luke Stevenson, maybe an heir apparent at catcher with Kobe Dickerson from Indiana, an outfielder who, as the sleeper, who just hits the ball really hard, plays center field, but has a lot of swing and miss. But, they weren't scared off a year ago by Jack swing and miss, and it's paid off for them so far. Detroit, Xavier Nyans and Sean Gamble. I tempted to flip those two. They've gone for left-handed prep hitters. So Nyans is a guy who, early in this process, if you went and looked at my way too early mock, the first one, he was a top 10 pick. So some chance to buy low. Now to Cleveland, I've got Ethan Conrad, the outfielder here. With Brady Ebel is the sleeper. I feel like Ethan Conrad, isn't he hurt? Yes. And there's some multiple levels of logic. One, he destroyed the Cape. 2, played in multiple different programs. 3, they love injuries, right? This does feel like more of a freak situation as opposed to when, they had DeLauder, who was hurt every year. But Conrad had, great metrics, great numbers. If he was healthy, if he didn't hurt himself, I think he goes in the top 10. So I think it's a chance to steal a guy and then maybe also get some savings to get someone like Angel Cervantes later. Get maybe a Brady Ebel down the board with, they've got the second rounder plus 2 comp B picks. I think I said 3 picks in the top 70. It's 4 picks in the top 70. So they're going to try to maneuver things. They never give anyone the full slot with their first pick. So Conrad would give them a different look, and he's got some legit power. So for people out there who want that, Ethan Conrad with this overall selection. Like I said, I will put a link to the whole thing with the double picks for every team in the notes for the podcast and on YouTube. I want to thank everyone who joined. Sorry if I didn't mention your team. I know I got a Rays fan who listens all the time. And to Tampa, I gave them, I think, Steele, the shortstop, right? Because they've been going for kind of, Theo Gillen a year ago. Why can I not find things? Steele Hall. So there we go. Tell me what you thought. Do you want more points of this? Well, we don't have a lot of time for it, so it's probably not going to happen leading up to the draft. Maybe on my personal YouTube, I can throw some more content. But college baseball, the regular season is done. So thought we'd have some fun, or I thought I'd have some fun with something I enjoy. Hopefully you enjoyed it as well. Thank you for joining us on today's show. Please rate and review, set downloads to automatic, comment, simple things you can do mean the world to us. A comment, a thumbs up, like it, share it. All those little things to keep helping us grow. Even if it's not your favorite thing, let it play in the background. Help us out any way you conceivably can. And I appreciate everyone who does. Again, thank you all for joining us, and go Guardians, go.